172 months passed between rainfalls in Arica, Chile. That's over 14 years without a single drop of rain, and it's the longest dry spell ever recorded anywhere on Earth. But that's not even the weirdest part of this story. Arica gets less than 1 millimeter of rain in a normal year, which isn't even enough water to make one full raindrop per square meter of ground. Yet almost 250,000 people live here, growing tomatoes and olives from trees planted over 300 years ago. When scientists studied what happens when rain finally does hit this desert, they found something really strange. In a place this dry, water doesn't help things grow. Water actually kills what's already living there. Let's start with the strangest fact about the driest city on Earth, because this one helps everything else make sense. Rain doesn't help the Atacama Desert. Rain kills what's already living there. NASA scientists studying the driest parts of the Atacama found something surprising. When water suddenly hits this soil, it doesn't help tiny living things grow. It destroys them. These little organisms spent thousands of years getting used to having no water at all, and when rain suddenly arrives, their bodies can't handle the shock. They break apart and die within hours. This is actually similar to what scientists think happened on Mars a long time ago. That's why NASA tests its Mars rovers in the Atacama before sending them to space. If you want to know how life might survive on Mars, you study the place on Earth that's most like it. And this flips everything you think you know about deserts upside down. We all learn that water means life, but in places this dry, water becomes something the land can't handle. The Atacama has been super dry for somewhere between 10 and 15 million years. Some dried up riverbeds here haven't had water flowing through them for 120,000 years. Every living thing that survives here learned to live without water, so giving them water is like taking a fish from the deep ocean and bringing it up to the surface too fast. Now that you know why rain actually hurts this place, the big question becomes pretty clear. How does anyone live here at all? Arica sits at the top edge of the Atacama Desert, just 18 kilometers from the border with Peru. 4 different things work together to stop rain from ever reaching this strip of coast, and understanding them shows why this desert exists in the first place. The Humboldt Current comes first. This is a flow of cold water from Antarctica that moves north along Chile's whole coastline. It cools the air above the ocean and creates something weird. Warm air gets stuck on top of cold air, which traps water close to the ocean, so clouds can't rise high enough to make rain. All that trapped water turns into thick fog, but almost never actual rain. The Andes Mountains create the second block. Wet air coming from the Amazon jungle rises when it hits the eastern side of the mountains and drops all its water as rain over the trees. Then that air crosses a flat area that's 300 kilometers wide and sits almost 4,000 meters up. By the time the air comes down toward the Pacific coast, every single drop of water has been squeezed out of it. The South Pacific High adds a third wall. This is a big area of high pressure that sits over the ocean and pushes air downward. Air that sinks gets warmer and warmer air gets drier. It's like nature running a giant machine that sucks moisture out of the air over northern Chile every single day. Where Arica sits on the globe locks in the fourth problem. At 18 degrees south of the equator, the city is in a spot where air from high up in the sky naturally sinks back down to Earth. This makes all the other drying forces even stronger. 4 different systems all working together, all aimed at the same narrow strip of coast, making a place that gets less than 1 millimeter of rain per year. But here's what makes Arica different from other really dry deserts. The city isn't hot. That same cold ocean current that stops the rain also keeps temperatures nice and mild, between 16 and 24 degrees all year long. People who live there call it the City of Eternal Spring, because they get extreme dryness without extreme heat. And that mix makes survival possible in ways it just wouldn't be in the Sahara or Death Valley. Less than 1 millimeter of rain falls on Arica in a normal year, but almost everyone who lives in the city has clean water to drink. That sounds impossible until you learn where the water actually comes from. The same weather pattern that stops rain makes something called camanchaca, a thick fog that rolls in from the Pacific Ocean. Sometimes it gets so thick it blocks out the sun completely. The name comes from a local language and means darkness. People figured out a clever way to use this fog. They put up tall nets made of mesh that catch tiny water drops as the fog floats through. Those little drops stick to the net and drip down into containers below. 1 square meter of fog-catching net can pull between 1/5 of a litre and 5 litres of water from the air each day when conditions are good. One beer company in northern Chile even makes 3,000 litres of beer every month, using only water caught from fog. But fog alone can't give water to a city of almost 250,000 people. Arica also pumps water up from underground in the Azapa Valley through wells. Chile's oldest water cleaning plant runs here too, built in 1998. It works differently than most because it cleans river water instead of ocean water, removing dangerous stuff like arsenic that naturally shows up in the local rivers. The rivers here carry arsenic because they flow down from volcanoes almost 4,000 meters up, picking up minerals that make the water unsafe to drink without cleaning it first. But just a few kilometers from downtown Arica, the Azapa Valley grows vegetables all year round. Farmers there produce tomatoes, peppers, oranges, lemons, passion fruit, and mangoes from soil that almost never sees rain. Olives grow there too, from trees that Spanish settlers planted way back in 1560. Some of those same trees still make olives today, 350 years after someone first put them in the ground. That's what figuring things out looks like when giving up was never a choice. Here's where the story takes a darker turn, because everything in Arica was built assuming rain would never come. The whole city exists for a world without rain, which means when water does fall from the sky, it causes huge problems instead of helping. In February 2019, 10 centimeters of rain fell in just 8 hours. Lots of houses started leaking because nobody ever needed to make them waterproof. Power lines that ran outside without any cover, which made perfect sense when rain seemed impossible, started sparking fires and knocked out electricity across whole neighborhoods. The desert ground had been baked hard as rock for so long that it couldn't soak up any water, so everything rushed into flash floods that tore through streets that were never built to handle them. March 2015 hit the wider Atacama even harder. 24 millimeters of rain fell in one day, which equals 14 years of normal Arica rainfall packed into just 24 hours. One river called the Copiapó had been almost completely dry for 17 years, and it overflowed within hours. At least 28 people died in the flooding, while thousands lost their homes. The damage cost around $1.5 billion to fix. But here's where something strange happens. When conditions line up just right, over 200 types of plants hiding in the soil suddenly burst into bloom all at once. People call it the flowering desert, and it happens when seeds that waited years or even decades for water finally get their chance to sprout. The 2015 bloom was the most amazing one in 18 years, covering bare hills in bright purple and yellow flowers. Chile liked this so much, they made a 500 square kilometer national park in 2023 just to protect it. The same rain that kills tiny desert life and floods cities brings flowers that haven't bloomed in a whole generation. As you can guess by now, nothing about this place follows normal rules. The super dry air here saved more than sleeping seeds. It saved dead bodies too. The Chinchorro people lived along this coast from around 7000 BCE until about 1500 BCE. During those 5,000 years, they came up with the oldest way of preserving dead bodies that we know about. 2,000 years before the Egyptians started making mummies, the Chinchorro were already doing it on beaches, near where Arica stands today. But the Chinchorro did things differently than the Egyptians in one big way. Egyptian mummies were only for kings and rich people who could pay for fancy preservation. The Chinchorro preserved everyone, no matter who they were. They kept the bodies of men, women, children, babies, and even babies who died before being born. Some scientists think the high levels of arsenic in the local water made more babies die before birth, which might be why people felt so strongly about preserving children who never got to live. Workers digging to lay water pipes near a big hill called Morro de Arica found a huge collection of these mummies in 1983. Digging that started back in 1914 has now found 282 Chinchorro mummies in the area. The oldest one that was preserved on purpose dates back to around 5050 BCE, making it 7,000 years old. The United Nations named these sites a World Heritage Location in July 2021. 7,000 years of human bodies survived here, kept perfect by the same harsh, dry conditions that make this place so hard to live in. And now those mummies face a problem nobody saw coming. The air is getting more humid because of climate change, and that extra moisture has started breaking down bodies that lasted 7,000 years without any trouble. The same dry conditions that kept them safe for all that time are starting to change. Chile is now the country with the biggest water problems anywhere in North or South America. The northern part of the country has gone through 10 years of drought with less rain than ever recorded, even for the Atacama. Mining companies digging up copper and lithium need huge amounts of water, and they keep using up underground water supplies that took thousands of years to build up. Chile is fighting back by building more water cleaning plants than anywhere else in Latin America. 24 plants were turning salt water into drinking water across Chile by 2024, and that number is supposed to triple by 2028. A city called Antofagasta, about 300 kilometers south of Arica, hit a big milestone in 2025. It became the first major Chilean city to get all its water from cleaned up ocean water. Arica will probably do the same thing soon. A new water plant for the city is already being planned, and approval seems like just a matter of time. The same ocean that blocks rain from reaching this coast will become where everyone gets their drinking water. That cold Humboldt current that created the problem in the first place will end up providing the answer, with its water cleaned through special filters instead of sitting useless offshore. 172 months without rain filled 14 years of clear blue sky, and Arica still holds that world record today. But the number by itself isn't what makes this place worth knowing about. What matters is everything that dryness created over hundreds of years of people figuring things out. A city where fog becomes drinking water because clouds never form high enough to make rain. Olive trees doing great in soil that hasn't seen rain in over 10 years. 7,000-year-old mummies lasting better than modern buildings when storms finally show up. A desert where rain actually works as a killer, while flowers sleep for whole lifetimes waiting for their one chance to bloom. Arica isn't a sad story about not having enough. The city shows what people can do when they have to adapt at the very edge of what seems possible. Almost 250,000 people built lives in a place that gets less water than where NASA practices for Mars missions, and they've done it for hundreds of years while figuring out how to keep doing it for hundreds more. The driest city on Earth where people actually live isn't dying of thirst. Arica keeps showing the rest of us what survival really looks like when the sky stops giving you anything at all. If you want to see more stories about the strangest places on Earth, subscribe now. We're just getting started with this channel.